There is a lot of confusion and fear around Kundalini.
A lot of people think meditation just doesn't work for me. Like maybe it's working for other people. I cannot control my mind.
You meet people where they are busy, distracted, skeptical, and you give them something they can actually apply.
Like Neo in The Matrix. You just gotta unplug, man.
Most people don't quit meditation because they're lazy. They quit because no one ever taught them how it's supposed to work.
That's an expansion of consciousness. And then out of that love, there comes wisdom and compassion automatically.
If someone only has 5 minutes today, what would you have them do step by step so they can feel a real difference right away?
In that oh my God moment, you're in the correct part of your brain. That's what we're trying to access in deep meditation.
When inner joy or peace arises, what's the mature next step?
This is our tradition that has been passed down. It's a very, very ancient technology, and it's very scientific.
What problem were you trying to solve when you wrote Mastering Meditation?
I had this huge experience and a download that came with it. So I felt my consciousness snap through the spine up into the brain.
What single principle creates the biggest shift for most people?
You can feel inside of the body and you can notice, oh my God, it's working. And that'll just set your hair on fire.
What kinds of emotional or physiological problems can arise when powerful practices are rushed?
When you're breathing at 12 or 15 or 20 breaths per minute, it's near impossible to concentrate on anything.
How do you define Kundalini in a grounded, responsible way?
It turns your past from a torture chamber into a storehouse of wisdom and learnings.
Welcome back. Most people don't quit meditation because they're lazy. They quit because no one ever taught them how it's supposed to work. Today on Beyond the Summit, I'm sitting down with someone who has helped thousands of people finally make meditation clear, practical, and repeatable. Not vague, not mystical, not just sit there and hope. My guest is Forrest Knutson, known to many as That Yogi Guy, a Kriya Yoga and meditation teacher who's become widely respected for breaking down deep meditation states in a way that actually makes sense. And more importantly, works in real life. If you've ever struggled with racing mind, inconsistent results, or confusion around breath work, this conversation is for you. Forrest is known for teaching HRV resonant breathing and connecting it to classical yogic wisdom like Patanjali's fourth phase of breath and Lahari Mashaya's tranquil breath with the step-by-step methods you can apply immediately. He's also author of Mastering Meditation, which I genuinely believe is one of the most practical and accessible books out there for anyone who wants to learn meditation without overcomplication, especially if you've tried before and felt stuck. Forrest, I'm honored to have you here.
Well, thank you so much. And like I say, welcome back. So good to have you. And I love meeting you today. This is great.
Fantastic. As you know, I'm a big fan, and I'm super happy that you're here today.
Beautiful.
One thing I really appreciate about your work, Faris, is that you don't mystify meditation. You make it usable. You meet people where they are busy, distracted, skeptical, and you give them something they can actually apply. When people come to you and say, meditation just doesn't work for me, what do you usually see going wrong?
Well, you know, a lot of people think, meditation just doesn't work for me. Like maybe it's working for other people, but it's not going to work for me. I already tried it. I cannot control my mind. And I love it when people say this because you actually have the problem upside down. And what the yogis are doing is they're actually confirming what you're saying. They're saying, of course, that's not what we're doing. We couldn't control our minds either. And so we developed a system where we're going to put the body into a low idle state. And that low idle state reflects on the mind and it slows down the mind. So you don't control the mind from the mind, right? So if I am the mind controlling the mind and that mind wins, I'm still stuck with my mind. So I still have the original problem. But if I slow down my body and I enter this low idle state, and so what's a low idle state? Well, you pull up your car to the stop sign and nobody sits there and revs the engine the whole time they're at the stop sign, right? We all sit there and we let the engine go down into a low idle state so that the engine can rest. It doesn't have to do work, but we're in stress all the time. So if we can use the body and its restful system, which is the parasympathetic system, and we can activate that as we're sitting very still in meditation, then we're going to slow down the body. And that reflects on the mind. The mind slows down and you enter into this wonderful meditative state. So people who have been trying for a very long time to, how can I get into meditation? I'm trying to get into meditation. And then they try out the resonant breathing. It's like, oh my God, here it is. How come nobody told me about this? Right? It's so simple.
Beautiful. That being said, what are the top 2 or 3 mistakes sincere people make when they try to meditate specifically on their own?
Yeah. So that's the number one mistake, is that I have to control my mind. So they attempt to stop their thoughts as if reaching into the mind and stopping the thoughts is the thing to do. They also think that it's concentration. So that's kind of the same mistake, that meditation is really forceful concentration, whereas it's actually a loose focus. And so the right attitude would be, a perfect focus would be, my God, I get it, right? That kind of, oh, that would be a perfect focus. And it's not a stressful left brain force. It's very, very easy and natural and so it's a soft, open focus that we want. And we don't achieve that immediately. It's the low idle state which produces it, right?
That's reassuring because so many people quietly blame themselves. You've said that simply watching the breath doesn't work, as we talked about it. For most of the people, why not? And what's missing when there is the only instruction out there is to watch your breath?
Yeah. So what has to happen is that we have to be in coherence first. And that means that the breath rate and the heart rate are matching. So usually the breath and the heart are kind of disjointed. When you're in stress, the body is chaotic. And so if you're racing, you're in the sympathetic system, then everything is jumbled and pumped up, which is what we need when we need to run for our lives, for example, right? But when you're not running for your life, the body wants to enter back into this state of resonance or coherence. And what that means is, as you breathe in, the heart rate will go up very slightly. And when you breathe out, the breath and the heart rate will go down in this very smooth valley, right? Then you'll breathe in, the heart rate will go up again. And then you'll breathe out and the heart rate will go very nicely down into this smooth valley. So now you have true flexibility in your heart. And this is really, really important, this flexible heart rate. And so that has to happen for you to have any kind of clarity in your mind. When you're breathing at 12 or 15 or 20 breaths per minute, it's near impossible to concentrate on anything because your whole body, your whole system is all jumbled up. And that's okay if you're running for your life, but if you're trying to hold a thought consistently, it's very, very difficult. So we control the breath with HRV resonance. I sit very still and I'm going to notice if there's any proof that my parasympathetic system is turning on. So we can talk about that if you like. But that control puts me into this flexibility of the heart. We call it resonance or coherence. And that has to happen to be able to concentrate on anything. So if the instruction is simply watch your breath, then you will get there. You will eventually, by sitting and sitting day after day and watching your breath, not controlling it, just watching, then in about 10 to 40 years, you will automatically enter into this state of coherence. But it takes forever. If you just control the breath, then you'll get there very, very quickly. And you can test this out if you go to a meditative studio and they say just watch the breath. Great instruction, very, very normal for meditation studio. And you sit down and watch the people that just came in. They've only been there a year or 5 years. And they'll usually be meditating, breathing above 10, 11, 12 breaths per minute. And then watch the really, really old teachers, and they will settle into meditation, and their breath will go way down below 7 breaths per minute. And that's the real threshold of 7. That's an in and an out. So 7 breaths per minute. Below that, we're in automatically the very beginning of a meditative state. And it doesn't mean that your mind will instantly be perfect. It just means I'm going that way. I'm going into ease. I'm going into calm. I'm heading into tranquility. I've turned on the parasympathetic system and I'm going down that road.
Beautiful. It couldn't be explained better than just what you said. So this clarity didn't come overnight. It came from years of searching. Take us back to the beginning. What were you personally searching for when you first got serious about meditation?
Yeah, wow, that's a huge story. So I was very interested in meditation, and I thought it was the answer to all of my life's problems. I thought, give me the meditation, this mystical thing. It's like, I gotta know what this is. And for some strange reason, I felt like there was an actual technique, you know? And so I would read these books and they would talk about imagine a flower is blossoming. And I'm like, what is this? Where's the real instruction? And so I finally fell into Kriya Yoga and I decided to go all in, go big or go home, right? So I went all in and I joined the ashram and I became a monastic. And so I was there and I thought they were going to give me all the secrets, I thought they were going to solve everything and none of that was there. So I just we had this study period every day and I just tore into everything that I could get my hands on to understand meditation. And I'm like, I'm going to crack this code. So I'd be there with all these very young monks and they would be reading a little poem or reading an inspirational quote and then meditating at the study time. Right. And I'd come in with a stack of books and I'd just slam it down and they'd look at me and I'd be like, what? I was just kind of ripping through everything. And I found this reference to states inside of the nose. So this is very difficult for people, which is why I don't teach it all the time. I teach HRV resonance all the time, which is very, very easy to get into. But if you will feel into your nose as you're going into meditation, the breath will actually touch different points inside of the nose. And I'm like, okay, so I should be able to track that while I'm in meditation. And I didn't realize what I was doing, but I started using that graph as a biofeedback device. And I didn't understand it at the time. I didn't have any of the language, but I was actually using it to induce HRV resonance. And so my meditations went from abysmal to just, oh my God, consistent. And it just blew my mind. And I finally realized this is the original promise of yoga. Consistency. It's not that you can't ever get into a deep state. It's that you would like to get into a deep state over and over and over again. And those breath states gave me the proof that you can make yoga meditation consistent. And it just blew my mind. And I tried to offer it to the other monks and there was a couple of people that were really close friends. They're like, oh, that's nice. I'm like, no, you don't get it. And so that was the beginning. I left the ashram. I wrote a book, still didn't have the HRV resonant language. I started studying with my guru, Ashokji, And everything that he told me, it pointed me in the right direction, which was wonderful. And along the ways, I was studying with him and he was telling me about the medulla over and over again, encouraging me to make the out breath a little bit longer. So he was telling me the correct things. And then I started to study a little bit of HRV resonance. That was with Dr. Gewurz. And oh my God, I'm like, this is it. This is what I've been doing. This is how it is actually working. That's the doorway into meditation. And clicked. It just clicked into place and I was gone. I'm like, this is exactly what we've been trying to do all this time. But now we have a medical language to back it all up. So
Beautiful. So I almost got a goosebump, the first time that I followed your instruction, and I calmed down my breathing rhythm, and then I felt the heat and that itching, sensation in my hands, and I felt really it is working. I felt it. Was there a moment for you, an experience or realization, then you thought, okay, this is real. This actually changes something.
yeah. Well, I had that from the breath states, and I was going really deep anyway. But the language of the HRV resonance was so clean and so pure that you didn't have to do all this theory. You didn't have to do the 20 years that I did. You didn't have to do all this stuff. And I could hand it to people and they would run with it. And in 5-10 minutes, they're getting into a state which took most yogis 10 or 15 years to even get close to and not even make consistent. So the language was just so powerful. And what you mentioned, so what I tell people is, you're going to have a proof that your parasympathetic system has turned on. You can feel inside of the body and you can notice, oh my God, it's working. And that'll just set your hair on fire because you're creating a perfect biofeedback loop, which is telling you you're doing right. Because a lot of meditation is, I don't know what I'm doing. Am I going in the right direction? What is this? A lot of meditation is that. So if you can have any kind of direction, it's like, wow, okay, I am pointed in the right direction. It just fuels the fire and you just zoom into these beautiful states. So that's hands hot and heavy. That's HHH is how I call it. Hands hot and heavy. And it's a galvanic skin response. So you get into the parasympathetic system, you're suddenly out of stress. And it doesn't have to be a lot of stress. It can be a very mild anxiety, a very mild stress that you're worried about this and you're worried about that. And you just get out of it enough and your arteries are actually dilating, which causes the blood to pool in your hands. So it warms up your hands. And that's what you'll feel, that warmth. So I call it hot, hands hot and heavy because it's easy to remember. But I had a yogi, he goes, Forrest, my hands do not get hot. They only get warm. I'm like, that's it. Perfect. So even if it's just a little bit warm, it might not be very big, but that's the sign I've actually switched towards my parasympathetic system and the meditation is working.
I love it. Beautiful. So, and the second best thing that I learned from you was cleansing chakras. I don't want to use the term. I want you to explain with your own definition. So that really works. It changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it sounds so, I don't know, airy fairy. It sounds so new age, but it's really for us. It's, this is Lahiri Mashaya behind me here. This is our tradition that has been passed down. It's a very, very ancient technology and it's very scientific. So we call it Om Japa in the chakras. And the theory here is that, well, of course, you've got a brain and that brain, when you experience things, it needs the body's story to explain what has happened. And so it projects your consciousness through your nervous system. And we say, okay, there's some power centers here. There's some places where it really consolidates, and we call those chakras, right? And so so that's your consciousness going through the nervous system and then going out to meet the world. And then we grab onto things. Oh, I have to have this. I'd really like that. I don't want that. Right. So that's the attachment and the aversion. And that creates this cycle of attachment and just getting yourself kind of caught in the grip of the world. Whereas if you ever gone on holiday and it's like, oh man, I'm so easy. I'm so calm and relaxed and at peace. And I'm going to go back to my life and I'm going to go nuts again. Right. That's the involvement. And we're trying to short circuit that through the Om Japa. So we go down into the first chakra. We feel it. We don't picture it or anything like that. We just feel it. And then we Om into it. And then we go into the second chakra. And I'm Oming in it mentally. So you can try it out loud, but it's more powerful over time if you can do it mentally because it's a mental interior process. I'm trying to interiorize over time. And so I'm going, feeling into the chakra, Oming into it, going to the second, and I go all the way up to the sixth chakra in the medulla, and then I go all the way back down. So that is the process of Om Japa. And it is interrupting that outward flow. And so over time, you'll get this feeling of more interiorization. And you'll get this feeling that the things that were bothering me are somehow not bothering me as much as they used to. And so we put these two things together, this low idle state and the Om Japa, and we enter into these. So by that interruption, your consciousness is actually going back towards the brain. And so you could see it that you're very, very narrow when you're consolidated with your lower chakras. Those are
Right.
the fear chakras. They are the want chakras. And so we are by default very, very narrow in that place. And so you'll find yourself getting a little bigger and getting a little bigger and having more understanding and little more ease and a little more letting go. And so you're coming up into the heart, into the throat, into the medulla, into the crown. And that's an expansion of consciousness. So we put those two things together, the low idle state, the Om Japa, and this magic starts to happen over time.
I love that. Would there be any difference if you Om chakras from front and back and from sides at the same time? Or it doesn't matter if you don't do it or just Om it from one direction most of the time from front side?
Yeah. So very good question. It's not a picturing process. It's a feeling process primarily, but it's kind of like tying your shoes. So if you could imagine, if you had to imagine all the folds to tie your shoe, it would be a very difficult process. And that's not what we're doing. We just grab the lace and we just tie it, right? It's very subconscious, very automatic. And it's all through the feeling of the lace. And the Om Japa is very, very similar, that there shouldn't be a lot of visualization. We might have a concept of what we're doing, but it's not a visualization process. It's really a feeling process. And that is activating the correct part of your brain, which is probably the caudate nucleus. So the left and the right caudate nucleus is allowing us to feel into the body. So that's how the Om Japa is working. And now, if you have a concept, that's great. And so you can say, here's my spine, here's the front of the body, and this Om is like a little Pac-Man kind of cleaning out the chakra all the way back to the spine. And as Kriya yogis, we want to get all the way back there because we say that there's bliss back there, that if you can go all the way back to the spine, if you can clean out the nervous system that far, that you will eventually start to feel bliss automatically in the spine itself, in the heart, and in very deep meditation. So we're looking for that along the way. And we kind of have this idea, I'm just going to clean my way all the way back to the spine. And so that's the main practice. But then occasionally I started to have this roll up of consciousness. And so I felt I was in a really deep meditation and I had this huge experience and a download that came with it. So I felt my consciousness snap through the spine up into the brain. And it happened so suddenly and so quickly it reminded me of those old roller shades. If you can remember those, you'd pull down the shade and you had to let it hook. And if you didn't
Right.
hook it and you just let it go, it would just snap up and go up at the top of the roller shade. And that's how I felt, that my consciousness snapped up the spine and rolled back into the brain. And I said, oh my God, I'm going to call this a roll up of consciousness, because that's what it's doing. It's rolling back into itself. It wants to go back into the brain, and it's getting hooked down below on the concerns of the world, right? And so that was the realization, that we don't have to push, we don't have to prod, that the consciousness actually wants to rise back to the brain. You just have to unhook it from the concerns, the outward concerns.
I loved your analogy. Beautiful, beautiful. Uh, Forrest, most people only hear the polished version of the story. What's one failure or painful period on your path that quietly shaped the way you teach and live today?
I was in the ashram and I was doing a lot of Kriya, and I had a Kundalini awakening, which means I'd have energy just shoot through the spine all the day. And I didn't know when it was going to happen. It would happen in meditation, and it started going back into my brain. And the lineage that I was working with, they were very spiritual eye centric. And so I was overusing the spiritual eye, just every day, every day, every day, putting tremendous amount of focus on the spiritual eye. And so when that Kundalini rose up and went into my brain, it went straight into the point which I was overusing. And it just gave me splitting migraines, just incredible amounts of headaches. And I had to ground my life. I had to reassess using the spiritual eye. And it became so bad. There were 3 monks, myself and 2 others, and we would get together. We would talk about spiritual things. We were very, very hungry to figure out meditation and to go into very deep states. We were trying to figure this out. And so we would get together and we'd compare notes all the time. We'd talk about this all the time. We talk about Ketri, Kundalini, everything, just all the time, all the time. And when I'd get together with them, it would just lift me right up. And that upliftment with the Kundalini would cause an almost instantaneous headache. So I'd talk to them for 5 minutes and I'd walk away having a migraine for an hour. And it got so bad that I would actually see my friends go, oh, nice to see you. And I'd wave to them and then run away, because I knew if we talk, I'm going to have a migraine for an hour. And this went on for I think about 5 years. And I really, really had to ground myself. And that seemed like the opposite direction. So you'll hear people like, oh, just go up, just forget the world, go up, forget the world. All you need is heaven. And when you come to that state, it actually creates a crisis, that you can't do that because it will absolutely burn up your nervous system. You have to ground. You have to balance your life. You have to balance your psyche. You have to integrate. And so I eventually realized, oh my goodness, this is baked into the Kriya technique. The Kriya says, so a lot of people know a little bit about the Kriya. It's not revealing a secret to tell you the Kriya goes up and the Kriya goes down. And so that is a message. We're not just going to go up and just stay up. We're going to go up and then reintegrate. So
Right.
and yeah. So it looks wonderful at the end, but there's a crisis in the middle. And the way that we avoid that, there are some insurance policies. So I made this video, Kriya insurance policies. No, I think I called it the 3 insurance policies.
Strongly recommend, to watch Forrest videos on his YouTube channel. I put the link in the description. Wonderful, just real authentic information that he has provided there. And you mentioned, raising consciousness forcefully. I will get back to that, so and awakening Kundalini, because these are subjects that many people like to know more about. Perspective changes as life unfolds. How has your definition of success changed from when you first started to how you see it today?
Well, when I was starting out, when I was a young spiritual seeker, it was all about samadhi. Like I have to crack the code of samadhi. And that was a worthy goal, definitely, but it usually becomes manic. So the desire for enlightenment, whatever we think that means, that the desire for moksha or liberation and the desire for these very, very transformative states of samadhi, which is a union. I was very, very hungry for them and manic. And I realized that, well, that manicness is actually the wrong portion of your brain. So we talked before, we're going to slow down the brain. And the part of your brain that you're actually slowing down is your left hippocampus. This is the center of language and memory. So you're actually slowing that down. You're kind of exiting from that. And over time, we're going towards the right brain. And the right brain it already sees everything as one. And if you go to the ocean, let's say, or you go out on a huge prairie and you just look at the ocean, the first second that you look at the ocean, you'll just take it all in. And in that moment, you're in the right brain. And then the left brain will reassert itself. We'll say, oh, look, there's an island. Oh, there's a ship. Oh, there's all these object. Let me take the whole and split it into pieces, right? So that's the left brain labeling function. But for a moment, we took it all in as one. Or when you go and see a very large piece of art, and for a moment, you don't judge it, you just take it all in, right? And you go, oh my God. In that oh my God moment, you're in the correct part of your brain. That's what we're trying to access in deep meditation. So the samadhi experience takes place through that portion of your brain, through the right brain. And so I'm on this journey, exiting the left brain, going into the right brain. And if I introduce a manic attitude, I have to have this, that's all left brain. So I'm trying to go into a deep state, but I'm defeating myself with this manicness. And that's the big mistake, right? So over time, you got to treat it like a date. I'm going on a date with this other part of my brain.
So beautiful and fascinating. Forrest, at this stage of your life, what do you believe actually matters? And what do people spend far too much energy chasing, in your opinion?
There's things that we need to do. And so the way that I teach Kriya now, the lineage that I am teaching with, it is a householder lineage. That is how Lahiri Mashaya intended Kriya Yoga to be handed down, was through a householder lineage. And in that householder way, we have our work, we have our family, and then we spend a little time, we run away and we meditate. And those three things create balance. And if I go too far into meditation and avoid the other two, then I start to get imbalanced. And if I just do work, well, I'm forgetting what it's for, right? Which is the family and the deep meditation that it's allowing me to do over time. But if I remember all three of those, then I have a hope of creating a balanced life, right? So I would say that those are the important things, but it's so easy to get lost into the world, into politics, into, so many things.
Right.
Yeah.
So the key word here would be the balance. And I love it. So you have watched both inner worlds and outer worlds change. How do you honestly see the world today, human behavior, anxiety, attention, compared to when you began your path?
So one of the things I've studied is neurolinguistic programming, and it was well worth my time because it's a bag of tools. And one of those tools is called chunking. So you can chunk down and get more information, or you can chunk up and you can get a bigger idea. So for example, if I'm sitting down at a table, then specifically going downwards on the table, I might have a plate, and specifically I might have forks and spoons with the plate. And then more specifically, those forks and spoons are made out of metal and certain kinds of metal. And those certain kinds of metal are made of molecules, and the molecules are made of atoms. And so I'm chunking down, 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 right? More and more specific. And then if I chunk up, I get more and more general. What is this really all about? Well, we're here at this table for a meal. What is the meal about? Well, it's about sustenance and community and the progression of our family and our lives, right? And so I chunk up a little bit higher. What's all of that about? Well, it's about love and community and joy and sharing, right? And so if you keep chunking up, things get more general and they get more light. And if you're trying to make sense of the world, that's the only direction you can go and hope for an answer. So if you try and get more and more specific about how everything is going wrong, then you are, in a sense, looking into the gutter of life. And it's always a little bit messy in the gutter, no matter how clean the city is, right? But if you look up in the sky, it's always a little bit beautiful. And so that's the difference between chunking down too far and then seeing the very big picture. But even when you attempt to see the big picture in this world, you've got to look at the big picture of time. Where are things going over a grand scale of time? That's the only way to really begin to make sense of it. Otherwise, it's going to pull you down and you're going to get discouraged by the world. And you're not really looking at the story of your soul when you're chunked down on that level. And it's not going to make sense until you look at the huge epic of your own soul.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing your wisdom like this for me. Every sentence you mentioned, it's full of wisdom and years of experience and hard work behind that. I see that clearly. And thank you for sharing with the audience that we have. Let's make it a little bit more practical. If someone only has 5 minutes today, what would you have them do step by step so they can feel a real difference right away?
Perfect. So we have a resonant breathing app. So if you look it up on Android or iPhone, this should be there, resonant breathing app. And you'll see a little guy sitting to meditate, and you'll see him breathing in and breathing out. And it will give you different breath rates. And you want to choose the one which is comfortable for you. Some people are tempted to be aggressive and try the breath rate, which is super slow. And if it's not comfortable, then you're going back into stress. And so that's not what we want. We want comfortability, right? So you pick that breath rate under 7 breaths per minute, and you can follow along. So you don't have to use the app forever, but it teaches you how to breathe with a lowered breath rate and making the out breath just a little bit longer than the in breath was. So that's a wonderful way to begin. And you can do that in 5 minutes. And let's say you do that for 4 minutes, or you do for 5 minutes, and then you take 1 minute and just feel, how do I feel? Do I notice there's a little bit of a shift inside of me? It's not a huge shift, but maybe it's a shift. And I go, oh my God, it worked. And then you keep coming back. You do that again every day, and you will absolutely get in touch with your parasympathetic system. And over time, that peace will seep into your life. And that's exactly what we're looking for.
Beautiful. So that alone gives people something that they can apply today. How should it feel when someone is doing this correctly? And what are the signs they are forcing it?
So when it's correct, you're going to notice some of the 4 proofs that I mentioned. So if you look up 4 proofs, my name, you're going to find that video, and it'll tell you about the 4 proofs. So they're the hands hot and heavy. Your lips might tingle. You might feel some pressure on the dorsal vagal complex, which I explain in the video, and your skin might tingle. And all of those are signs that your parasympathetic system has turned on, and you should start feeling some peace. So then you should find that you start to feel some peace, some relaxation, some tranquility, as if you are downshifting your car, downshifting your life, and just getting into the groove. And that's really the beginning of noticing all of that. Another technique that your audience might like is Hakala. So the Hakala technique is kind of beautiful because it gives you a taste of what the right brain is very, very quickly. And so to do that technique, you just look straight ahead. And then while you're looking straight ahead, you want to notice everything on your left and everything on your right simultaneously. So when I show this to my daughter, I'll have her look straight ahead, and then I'll put my fingers on the side and I'll say, "Can you see all my fingers?" And when she can see all of my fingers simultaneously, then I know she's in her peripheral vision. And that's a neurological driver. It shoves you over to touch your right brain. So you can be thinking, and then do that. And when you do it perfectly for just a moment, that chatter will stop. Even if it's just a moment, you just tasted what people call the no mind or the silence. You've touched that, and it's all your right brain.
Beautiful. So we talked about HRV resonance, and I know how important it is, and you always talk about it. On the other side, we have tranquil breath or the fourth phase of breath. Are they the same or different concepts? Can you elaborate a little bit more about
Absolutely. So the program that we're following is to get in touch with the parasympathetic system over and over and over again. And what will happen automatically when you do that over and over again is one day you'll be sitting in your car, you'll be sitting in a meeting, you'll be sitting watching a movie with your family, and you'll look down at your body and you'll notice, oh my God, my breath rate is automatically under 7 breaths per minute. I'm in HRV resonance right now. I was not even trying. And this is the beginning of the yogic body. You've accomplished something. You've reprogrammed your body. You've reprogrammed your subconscious. You've even reprogrammed your medulla and the way that the cells inside of your lungs operate. So you've reprogrammed your whole body. You now have the first level of the yogic body. So I contact that over and over and over again. And it builds strength between me and the parasympathetic system. And that is magic. So eventually, when I do that day after day after day after day, and each time I meditate, I'm sitting very still, then it's going to orient me towards the dorsal vagal complex. And that just means that you have 2 vagal complexes in the body. You've got one on the back towards the spine, and you've got one on the front of the body, which is the ventral vagal. So you got dorsal vagal, ventral vagal. And we're sitting very still, and that's helping us interiorize towards that dorsal vagal. So that dorsal vagal is very good at freeze. And this is a very, very positive freeze. So you might have heard of a negative freeze. That's when you get stuck because you don't want to come back into your life, right? It's very, very negative in my life. I haven't cleaned any of it up. I haven't done the Om Japa in my chakras. And so I just want to stay away from that. I'm stuck in a negative freeze. This freeze is very, very positive, very, very delicious. It actually feels blissful. And so we are orienting ourselves towards that. Every night we go into a freeze. When you have a good sleep and you wake up and you feel so good, it's because you were in the freeze response during that sleep. And the body freezes you in place so that you can have a dream and you don't jump out of bed or roll out of bed, right? You got to be frozen so you don't move. And so that's an automatic freeze response taking place every single night. And that's my proof to all of us that the freeze can be actually very, very good. Your body's doing it every single night to keep you safe. So in meditation, we're learning to awaken this state while the mind is fully awake. So I contact the parasympathetic again and again and again, and I start to enter into this freeze response. And that will freeze my upper chest just a little bit. And the breath will move down into the belly. So I'm not forcing it there. I'm not shoving it there. It just happened automatically. And the first automatic belly breath will be usually very, very shallow and a bit of a short breath. So you might stop your resonant breathing and just be sitting there enjoying the peace and notice that oh my God, my chest is frozen just a little bit. My breath has moved down into my belly and it's very shallow and it's kind of fast. Like this is faster than my resonant breathing, but it's very, very light, very, very shallow. And the yogis call this the tranquil breath. And that's the first level. The second level, the breath will actually become moderate. So it will slow down even more. So I slow down the body. It slows down the mind. Now the mind is pulling less energy, pulling less reserves. And so the body again will slow down. And then the mind will slow down again as well, become more quiet, more still. And so there's this wonderful loop of biofeedback which is going on. And that helps the tranquil breath get into this moderate breath rate. So be shallow, easy breath, and moderate. And then it will become very, very, very long. So this is a really profound state. Doesn't happen overnight. Takes, maybe years. If you accomplish it in your lifetime, you're an accomplished yogi. If you get any of these things that we've talked about today, if you get HRV resonance, oh my God, you just skipped 20 years or maybe 40 years. If you can get it every single day, oh my God, you've definitely skipped 40 years. If you can get the freeze response, oh my goodness, absolutely an accomplished yogi. If you can get the tranquil breath, oh my goodness. If you can get the very, very tranquil breath, which is this really, really slow breath rate, right? This very shallow, easy breath. It's as if the breath almost disappears, but it didn't stop. It's just very, very slow. And that's the very, very deep, tranquil breath. So that's what that is. It's a different mode of breathing because I've got in breath, I've got out breath, I've got holding the breath, and then I've got this other thing where the chest is frozen and the breath is moving down deep into the belly.
Beautiful. That's so powerful. So you mentioned deep stillness. Once someone touches that deeper stillness, what actually changes in their daily life after caution?
Good question. So a lot more peace, a lot more stillness, a lot more perception. So the Buddhists have a wonderful list of metta, right? They have a list of loving kindness and compassion and joy and equanimity. And that's really a wonderful list of what is taking place. So you're coming up, your consciousness, like we talked about this roll up of consciousness, right? It's coming up into your heart. That's an expansion of consciousness. And then out of that love, there comes wisdom and compassion, right? Automatically. I didn't have to try to be compassionate. I wasn't putting on an affectation of compassion. I wasn't putting on an affectation of love. No, it just popped up and it was there. It was an automatic expansion of my consciousness, right? And then there's this relief that happens. Oh my God, I'm out of the stress. Oh my God, I'm out of the matrix of the world. I'm out of that craziness. I've pulled away and I suddenly have peace. And that peace and that relief, it gives you joy, right? So now you have love, you have compassion, you have joy, you have wisdom, you have this, maybe you have some bliss. Maybe you have some really beautiful joy. Maybe you have some downloads that happen. Because when you're jumbled up in the world, it's very, very difficult to figure out anything. And when you're in the left brain is designed to be extremely linear. One thing after. So if this was your computer, you would just take it, you would chuck it, right? It's just so slow and so linear. But when you touch the right brain, it sees everything as one. And so it's constantly making and has all these interconnections of your world. So you begin to touch that, not even get into it, just touch it. And you get
Right.
these downloads of understanding. So it might come as a big knowing. It might become as a tiny clarity. You might say, oh, I knew that, but I didn't get it. It will just blow up in your face. You'll go, oh my God, I get it. So you'll have all these aha moments. So all of
I
that.
love it.
Yeah. So all of that will happen. So downloads, love, joy, clarity, that's what starts to happen. That's your sign that you're going. And the things that used to bother you, like I mentioned before with the Om Japa, something bothered you, and then it will come back in your life and you'll see it and it won't bother you. And you might even have a sense of humor about it. You might go, oh my God, how funny. That used to bother me. It doesn't even bother me anymore. That's a beautiful proof.
I love that. So beautiful. Forrest, you use the word bliss carefully, not theatrically. How do you define bliss in a grounded way that doesn't turn into escapism?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really out of this, well, there's two kinds of bliss. So there's a bliss which is associated with your nervous system, and it's really right on that edge of the dorsal vagal complex, right between the sympathetic and the deep parasympathetic. And it's if you can feel that there's pressure. So if I do a long out breath, then there's a compaction which is happening right here. So my chest is going down and the diaphragm is pushing the air out. So that's a double massage, a double compaction right here. And I can feel that pressure. So if I just breathe out, you can feel that pressure going backwards towards the spine. And we know already that that is stimulating the dorsal vagal because that's what creates the coherence between the breath and the heart, the resonance, right? So we already know that that is taking place. And so I can start to feel that pressure. And if I feel backwards through that pressure, then I might actually feel something like a tingle, just a little bit of
Right.
tingling. And if I can feel that, and I keep listening, kind of like you're tuning the dial on your radio, trying to get the radio station just right, you just keep feeling into that tingling, then it will start to feel like bliss. And that's the bliss of your spine. And that bliss tells me, okay, I'm going inside. So Carl Jung, he said, who looks inside awakes, who looks outside dreams, right? So I'm looking inside and I'm feeling in that correct direction. So the Kriya Yogis say, well, the bliss will send you in the correct direction. And eventually I'll get up into the region of the heart. And the heart is connected to your left amygdala. And the left amygdala is the center of bliss and joy and pure love. So when you love your kid, like a mom loving a son or a daughter, it's just a pure love. I just love you without condition, right? That pure love, that's of the left amygdala, right? And so when you get deep into the heart, you have your consciousness kind of rolls up into the region of your heart and you feel some of that spontaneous loving kindness and compassion. Now you're in that region. You're in the region of the left amygdala. So, yeah, I think that's the best explanation.
It is beautiful. Thank you for clarifying this, the concept of bliss. When inner joy or peace arises, what's the mature next step? How do people integrate it into real life?
When that happens, when the joy comes in like that, it's it's something new, it's something strange. And a lot of people don't know quite what to do about it. And they want to overshare with other people, which is normal. But none of that oversharing will be usually will not go well for them. Other people won't be able to understand and they won't be able to follow what's going on inside of you because you've been through this whole journey to get to this point and you're like, here, just take it. But they can't. They have to actually go on some of that journey themselves. So you have to ground yourself again, back to grounding, back to integration. And that's really the magic to take what you have found and then figure out how does this apply to my life? How does this integrate? What do I do with this joy when I go to work? What do I do with this joy when I'm with my family? What do I do with this joy when my friend is going through a hard time and he cannot even comprehend where I'm coming from? What do I do with all that joy? So a lot of times it turns into a prayer or you pray for people, or I like to say I go fishing. So I really don't, I've had a lot of disappointment trying to share with other people, of course. And it's kind of like, you have all this treasure and you'd like to just give it away, but those are people that are uninitiated. And there's this process of initiating yourself through a process like meditation. And so you're trying to give away something that they don't understand what it is. And it's not possible. So what I like to say is I like to go fishing. So I'll just throw out a hint. Maybe you'd like some HRV resonance. Maybe you would like some Om Japa. And I'm just fishing. I'm just waiting to see who will bite the hook and follow along, and I can share more of what I've found. But it's a very long process, and you have to be extremely patient. And you start to understand what it is to be the higher self and wait for the soul to catch up. You start to see what that looks like because you start to live it with your friends and with your loved ones a little bit. And you have to value where people are coming from and that they might have their own expertise as well. And so it's never a matter of pride that you have a secret that you would like to share. It's always a matter of, well, I'd like to share it.
I love it, So I personally believe not everyone is ready for a message, for a wisdom, but for many of those people. So when the right time comes, as a result of exposing yourself, or as you mentioned, fishing is a great analogy for that. So if someone resonates with what you're offering, they will initiate the process and then they will be there finally. I'm sure thousands of these examples that you've had. And it's lovely. You couldn't explain this better than this. I love it. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Your Forrest, your books feel like maps, not promises. What problem were you trying to solve when you wrote Mastering Meditation? This is great book.
Thank you.
Mastering Meditation.
That turned out really well. I'm very pleased with that book. And it really is a map. So you said it perfectly. It's not making any promises or boasts. It's just here it is. And it's a very Eastern way to teach. I had somebody comment on a video one time. He goes, "You haven't proved your point." And I thought about that. I'm like, oh, how interesting. And that's what a Western standpoint looks like. Well, prove your point, prove it to me. And Eastern is just, hey, you might want to go over there. Like all the way back to Plato. Hey, there's light out here, guys. Would you like to come out to the light? And nobody has to, and you can't force them, but you can tell them there's light out here. You might want to go check it out. So it's very much that way. There's a host of problems that I've tried to solve by putting all of this into the language of the body. And that really takes this problem of what are we talking about? So a lot of the ancient scriptures are very, very true, but they didn't have a grounded language to talk about it. So a lot of times it was metaphor. A lot of times it was a story. They would couch their learnings inside of the story. You had to pull the story apart to attempt to know what they were talking about. And a lot of times they were describing something that they just felt in meditation. And maybe they felt it once or twice or 100 times, but still it was very, very subtle to try and explain exactly what that was. And so it turned into all of these stories. And so here we are following yogis and Buddhists and meditators, and we're talking about all these things which are up in the sky, and we don't know what any of them are. But if you take HRV resonance, if you take the right brain and you start to pin these things down as processes inside of the body, well, you can actually track it. You can actually follow it. You can actually do it. And so this amazing thing happened when I started to teach is I would give it this way with this kind of language. And because people are not second guessing themselves constantly, they just pick it up and they run and they do it and they have wonderful results. So that really solves this problem of what are we talking about? Where's this going? How does it actually work? And that's the hunger that I came with. I really wanted to know how meditation actually worked. And so sharing that is extremely fulfilling. And it takes the road of my students from being a very long road to a very short road. And that's beautiful. It's still it's a difficult process, but you get a lot of results right away.
Thank you for putting your guidance out there for everyone to have access. I really appreciate that. Forrest, out of everything you've taught over the years, what single principle creates the biggest shift for most people?
Well, the two that we were talking about are really the two biggies. So HRV resonance and the right brain. If you just have those two things, then you're really on the right track. So we could add a third one, which would be the Om Japa. That would be the three possibly biggest main points. I know you asked for one. If we had to boil it all the way down, I would say that HRV resonance, because that's the true doorway. And then in the middle would be the Om Japa, and then eventually the right brain. And then you've basically solved the entire equation.
Thank you. People are questioning the future right now. When you look at humanity's past and where we are today, what concerns you and what still gives you hope?
When I started this path, I was looking for spiritual books. I was a very young man. I was still in high school, and we had one spiritual bookstore, which was far away from where I lived. So I had to get all the way over there. I had to look and search for a book and hope it had some of the information that was inside, that I was looking for. And often I would order a book hoping that it would give me answers. And of course, many, many, many of those books fell far short, and no fault to the author. They were saying what they had to say. So it was quite difficult to learn the actual process. But here we are in a day and age when we have so much help from so many corners of the world in understanding how meditation works, how the process of psychology and bettering ourselves works. We have so much opportunity with artificial intelligence. I know some people are worried about artificial intelligence, but you can get so many answers from artificial intelligence right now. So before this interview, I had a huge problem with my audio stack inside of my computer, and AI took me through the whole process. It was wonderful. So having an assistant like that, I mean, you couldn't have that in the past. And then here it is. It's kind of an amazing thing. So it's easy to look at the world and be afraid. And that's very normal. So fear is usually the normal state, but that fear is all down. It's the lower concern in the lower three chakras. And if we're going to taste what meditation actually is, we have to try a little bit of transcendence. It doesn't mean we can't ever be worried ever again, or that we're just going to throw all that worry out the window. It just means, why don't we pause? Can I just put pause on the world, not listen to the news? The news is very political. That means there's infighting all the time. So it's going to really confuse you very, very often. So can I just put all of that on pause and step away? Can I step away for just a moment? I'm going to come back. I'll get more involved later, right? But can I actually just put everything on pause? And that's the promise of meditation, is just put it on pause and see what else is here. See what else life has to offer. There's so many beautiful things. And a lot of times we're worried and concerned about things we see on a box, which we call our TV, and we say that it's the real world. But more than often, that so-called real world never even touches your world. And yet you're so involved, it ruins your day, it ruins your month, it ruins your week, it ruins everything. You go to work, you complain about it there, and it's just over and over and over again. It's all of this sympathetic stimulation, right? There was this wonderful article talking about the amount of information that is streaming to every individual right now. And it's massively more than what you used to be able to get through the newspaper even 50 years ago. So your ancestors, while they tell you you have it so much easier, which is true in some ways, but in the ability to cope with so much information, you actually have it much, much worse. And so you got to find a way to step away. So we really need meditation now more than any other time in our history. Because if you plug yourself into the machine of the TV and the media constantly, you're just going to lose yourself in it, because there's always the next thing to get stressed and angry and upset about. And now you're just stimulating. You don't understand it, but you're putting yourself in a feedback loop of anxiety and stress and sympathetic awakening. And then at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, you're like, why am I so messed up? Because you never took a moment to like Neo in the Matrix. You just got to unplug, man.
Beautiful. I want to repeat your key sentence. We need meditation now more than any time ever.
Yeah.
Perfect. So you mentioned you started when you were at high school at very young age. What do you hope the next generation understands sooner about life and inner work than we did?
Yeah, that. Exactly that you can unplug, that, it's the simple things in life. It's the simple connections with your loved ones. It's the simple beauty of a sunrise, sitting having a cup of tea, reading a book. There are some very, very simple things which make life magical. And when you can unplug and you can slow your life down and actually be present for just one or two or three of those, then suddenly your life gets magical again. But if you hook yourself into the machine, into the matrix, it's guaranteed to ruin your life. And so just having a little bit of that ability would be magical. So I teach my daughter meditation. I don't force her, but I encourage her and I show what it looks like and what it can do for her. And she has a taste of that. And so I offer that taste again and again. And I hope that she will pick it up. And that makes your life a little bit magical.
I love it. I told you we'll get back to Kundalini and Kundalini awakening, the experience you've had yourself. There is a lot of confusion and fear around Kundalini. How do you define Kundalini in a grounded, responsible way without exaggeration or fear-based language?
So I told you this experience. I had all this energy shooting up my spine. It was splitting my brain. So I've been through all of the Kundalini. I know exactly what it feels like, what it looks like. What it really is it's your energy and your consciousness coming back to the brain. And if that is done in an irresponsible way, then it can cause a lot of havoc in our bodies and in our lives. But if you have just a few simple things, which are things that I teach on my channel. So those are the Mahamudra stretching, the Navi Kriya, and the Om Japa in the chakras. So those are all on my channel. You don't even have to contact me to learn those things. You can just watch them on my YouTube channel. But those three things, those are the insurance policies which are built into the original Kriya Yoga, where they're trying to solve this problem before it ever shows up. And then the other thing is the integration with your life. So I had this experience and I try and bring it back and express it in my life, ground it in my everyday moments by learning to unplug and sharing a bit of love, a bit of joy, right? When I can. So that recipe right there will keep everything in balance and keep it from overwhelming you in a way which is, so you go to some places, they're like, we're going to stimulate your Kundalini. We're going to stimulate your spiritual eye. We're going to stimulate all these things. And it sounds so great. They're like, oh, we're going to go really fast. And then people get into these problems and they come to me and they go, now what do I do? I'm like, well, ground yourself, do the stretching, do the Navi, do the Om Japa, clean yourself out, get all that, get into the low idle state and start to really, really, really ground yourself. So I had a student, he said, well, I was having all this Kundalini. So I would just go down to the ocean and put my feet in the ocean and just let the waves come over me for hours. And that was really, really grounding for him. Put him into a state of flow as well, that grounding and flow. And then everything was okay. But if it's done with stress and pushing, right? This forceful nature, right? So when you're an aggressive person and it works for you in your life, then you are the hammer and everything looks like a nail. And so you come into meditation, it's like, I want to force this too. And
Mm,
it's really not the smart way to go about it. You actually want to be really, really kind and gentle with yourself. So everything that I teach is very kind and gentle because you don't want to face this problem. You want to sidestep the entire problem if you can.
wonderful. What kinds of emotional or physiological problems can arise when powerful practices are rushed?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the lower mind. we call it the manas mind. It's the mind which is hooked up into the matrix, hooked up into the world. And with that, there's always trauma. So no matter how good your life has been, you've had some of this trauma of being alive. And that trauma is stored in those lower chakras. So it's negative emotions, it's limiting decision, it's this garbage of our past, which we haven't been able to fully resolve. So the subconscious is this memory machine, and something happens. We don't understand it. We don't get it. Why did this happen? Why did this happen? Why did they do that? Why did they say that? This is an unresolved negative experience in our subconscious. And so when the Kundalini jumps up too fast, it brings all of that with it. And you have to face that all at once. And you don't want to do that. What you want to do is get into the low idle state, practice a little bit of the Om Japa in the chakras every day, and very slowly clean that out and get the realizations of that, the downloads of those understandings of, I get it. Oh, that wasn't me. That wasn't my problem. That was their problem. They were having whatever, they were in the state that they were, right? So we get all these learnings and downloads and we let go of that past. And that's a cleaning out process. So my guru, Ashokji, he would tell me over and over again, clean it out, just clean it right out. So that was his message. He must have said that. I mean, he burned it into my brain. He said it so many times, but that was all the Om Japa. And all that cleaning was to get that material out of the subconscious so it doesn't just all up and come into your face at once.
Beautiful. So, Forrest, wisdom often comes with gentle honesty. Is there anything you regret, not heavily, but humanly, about how you approached your path earlier on?
That's a beautiful question. One of the things I had the privilege of studying was timeline therapy with Tad James. So Tad James taught neurolinguistic programming, and he was working with this technique of walking through the timeline. And he was actually at a bus stop. A funny story. He was at a bus stop just talking to this lady and going through this technique with her just to pass the time while they were waiting for the bus. And she goes through this negative emotion and he has her walk along the timeline. And then he says, okay, where is that anger now? And she goes, it's gone. He goes, no, that's impossible. Where is it? And she goes, no, it's actually gone. And his mind explodes. He goes, what is this? And out of that experience, he develops timeline therapy. And I bring it up just because he said something really, this is possibly the most powerful thing he ever said. He said, this process of cleaning out your past, it turns your past from a torture chamber into a storehouse of wisdom and learnings. That's gorgeous, right? So sure, there were missteps. Every life has missteps. I could have gone this way. I could have gone that way. But the culmination of all that is what I have today. So each of those hard lessons are kind of badges. You wear your scars like badges, right? So we all have all these things that have happened to us. And if we can just suck the marrow of the bones of those horrible experiences and say, this is my truth from this, then you've taken that horrible moment and you've just completely flipped it. And now it's a treasure. So you see people that go through some horrible experiences, right? And they want to talk about it. And they go out on the road and they start warning people about this or warning people about that. And it turns into this wisdom and this learning that they get to share with the rest of the world. And in that moment where that really clicks, they've done this process. They've transformed what was horrible and awful into something glorious and beautiful that I can share with other people. Don't go down that road because I went down that road, right? And that's the transformation. So I can't, because I've done this process so much, I can't look back and say I regret anything. So yeah, there's things I could have done better. There's things that better choices I could have made. Every single step is a learning. And when you walk away and you're still alive and you're still learning, I mean, hallelujah. What else can you ask for?
Beautiful. Just that being said, if you could go back 20 years and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, it would be pretty much everything we've talked about. So it would be HRV resonance, the right brain, left amygdala, the upper nervous system, all of that. That language makes sense of everything that I was looking for. But
I agree.
yeah, it just turns it into a mystery. This is just go that way.
Beautiful. For someone watching who wants more clarity, energy, and inner freedom, where should they start tomorrow morning?
Well, I have a video. It's on my YouTube channel. It's called Start Here. That's a good one. They can
Perfect.
start with the HRV Resonant app. That's perfect. You showed my book. That's a wonderful place to start, and it lists some of the videos in order to get into and understand. So that would be the place.
I appreciate that. I put the link of your YouTube channel in the description, and I strongly recommend that people go and watch every single video. I almost watch all of your videos, so,
Thank you.
and it's beautiful. Forrest, this conversation has been incredibly grounding, practical, and generous. Thank you for sharing not just techniques, but wisdom earned through years of practice.
Thank you so much for having me. You were wonderful.
Appreciate that. And if this conversation gave you even one insight you can apply today, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could use more clarity in their life. Thank you.